The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back talking baseball in the zone. I'm Ralph Tycho with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and we have a name change in shows. We were Senators Twins, and we are going to expand our horizons a little bit by talking about baseball in general. And I'm Ralph Tycho with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. We have kind of a full house. Let me introduce Bill Hall from Oregon.
Good morning. Hello.
Good morning, Bill Hall.
Hi, Bill.
How about Gabriel Schechter from Oregon now? Huh? Or Washington, is it?
I've been in Oregon for 2 weeks already, and I'm very happy about that. Good morning, everyone.
Well,
welcome, my fellow Oregonian.
Yeah, Bill.
What a great state, the state of Oregon. I'm here in the state of confusion.
You're the mayor of the state of confusion, aren't you?
I'm the Pope of the state of confusion, to be honest with you. My mind blanks. Who's here today? Ronnie Rabinovich.
Right,
Ronnie Rabinovich had been on the DL. Are you home from the hospital, Ronnie?
No, I'm not. I'm actually in the hospital still.
Wow.
Oh, my.
You're awfully gutsy
doing it from
and coming back strong. We appreciate that.
Right.
Al Blumkin is
It's
not
good to be
here.
back.
And, again, George Case. Anyone else?
Gene Hutmaker, the Yankee hater.
Oh, Gene, the Yankee-hating machine.
Don't forget about me, Rob. Ian Kahanowitz up here in Boston.
Ian Kahanowitz.
Ian, how are you?
We have a Rabinovitz and a Kahanowitz, and this time on the same show.
Ralph?
Yes.
Ralph? Zig? Does that make it a battle of wits?
No, because I'm in it, so you can't. No wits with me around.
Very good.
All right. I promised the audience last week when we were the Senators Twin Show that we would talk about Charmin Harmon Killebrew. Oh, by the way, David Hubler called. He can't. He's indisposed today. He's got a regular on the show, and he can't make it. Harmon Killebrew. I want to go around the room a little bit, and if you would, gentlemen, give me your impressions of Harmon Killebrew. Give me some memories. Hall of Famer, hit over 500 home runs, won 500 home runs, was a humongous accomplishment back before things were different with cork bats and balls hardened and some say PEDs. A little bit to do with the inflation of the home run totals lately. But Harmon was something special, and I'm going to start randomly. Ian Kahanowitz, would you be so kind as to just tell me something about Harmon off the top of your head? You're a baseball historian.
One of the things I got to say about Harmon is one of the nicest guys to ever play the game. And when he visited my Yankees back in the 1970s, there was a little boy in the hospital, and he had just received 80% of his body was burned from being a choir boy at the church, and he accidentally got lit on fire. And he asked the doctor.
Was that a ceremony? I don't know about churches. Was that a ceremonial thing?
Yeah, it was a mass, and the little boy's robes got on fire because he accidentally bumped into a candle, and he had burns over his body, and his favorite player was Harmon Killebrew. And Harmon actually visited him in the hospital that day when the Twins were in the stadium. Well, actually, it was Shea because it was 73-74. And he came to visit the little boy, And he said, I'm going to hit you one, maybe I'll hit two today. And he went out there and he kept his promise. He would not let that little down.
That's like a Babe Ruth legend.
And that little boy grew up to be Johnny Sylvester. Yeah.
Actually,
his name was Johnny Gwiney, and actually the year was 1964. So, yeah, and he signed the ball to my pal John, and when he left, he said, maybe I'll hit you a couple, and he did. He went out, and he did, and they won, and, that's the kind of guy Harmon was.
Wow.
Terrific guy.
He wisely did not promise to hit two singles.
No. Right.
He was trying to break the shift, so he was the other way.
Well, Ralph, being here in Minneapolis, Harmon is, of course, was and always will be a historical figure here. He was absolutely loved by the fans, by his teammates. He was a real terrific guy. He was not a big man, tall-wise, but boy, he had arms like a blacksmith, and he could hit that ball like you can't believe. He was terrific, and what a gentleman. It was an honor to meet him several times, and just one of the nicest men I ever met.
Could you guys tell me something about his fielding? There were an enormous amount of great third basemen in his day. Brooks Robinson, Lee Boyer, fielding-wise, and Ken Boyer, and Matthews, and Santo, and just a glut, Frank Malzone. He wasn't known for his fielding, but I don't think he was all that bad. He played three different positions. He played first base, he played third, he played a little left field in his day. Was he hurt by the fact that there was so many good third basemen, reputation-wise? Start with Bill Hall. What do you think?
I when you were giving that rundown, Ralph, I was thinking of Dick Allen, another guy who kept getting moved between first and third in the outfield. And I think maybe once, if you're not really anchored in a particular position, that ends up becoming, more challenging for a guy really to establish any kind of, reputation for their glove. But my impression, although I didn't get to see a lot of Twins games on television growing up, and sadly never got to see Harmon in person, my impression was always that he was very good, solid, and steady with the glove.
He was.
I
agree with you.
Okay.
I don't think he was an outstanding fielder, but I don't think people then cared about his fielding.
Right.
Yeah, any guy who can hit nearly 600 home runs in an era when people were not hitting home runs, they'll forgive a lot.
Right.
Absolutely. And the Twins were very clever defensively. They had Rich Rollins at third. They had Vic Power at first along the way.
Versailles at short. They had a good fielding infield.
Yeah, very good. Right.
Yeah, and in that year, in 1965, when they won it all, Billy Martin was the third base coach. And Versailles, Gabriel, and he was helped tremendously by Billy Martin.
Oh, yeah.
Peter Goldenbach writes about it in his book about Billy, number one. And he writes about the situation when Carl Irmer was the manager, and Billy got a bad rep for trying to get his job, and that wasn't the case at all. But we digress a little bit.
Hey, Ralph. Even though we already pretty well established what a nice guy Harmon was, can I just share one more story along that line? Earlier this morning, I was talking over the phone with my aunt, who is a native of Oregon, but she married a man from Minnesota. They were married 29 years until he passed away. And I told her about this program, and she said, oh, my gosh, of course, being a native of Bloomington, my Uncle Don was a rabid, lifelong Twins fan, and the only Major League player she ever met in person was at the Minnesota State Fair. She met Harmon Killebrew. She hugged him, and she said, I've got a husband and 3 kids at home, but I really wish I could take you home with me. And she said, she just laughed and laughed and laughed. Yeah.
I met him. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I met him only once in passing at the Hall of Fame, but among the staff there, he was known as one of the 3 or 4 nicest Hall of Famers, along with Bobby Dorr, an Oregonian, and Robin Roberts at the time was a real prince too. But Bobby Dorr, I think, is consensus regarded as the nicest man who's in the Hall of Fame.
Wow.
Well, and I started to say he just passed away a few weeks ago. Bobby Dorr did. And may he rest in peace. He lived to be in his late 90s. Almost 100.
And in great shape until the end. And I've actually got sort of a distant connection with him. One of my coworkers, his former coworkers, now retired, his wife was distantly related to Bobby, and so once or twice a year they'd go and visit him. And they said, great health, except being in his 90s. His hearing had gone pretty bad, but he actually refused to ever get hearing aids. So they'd pull up in the driveway, and you could hear the TV very loud and clear in the driveway. But she said he was a prince of a human being.
Well, that brings to mind a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode when Larry goes to visit his dad in the nursing home, and he's horn turned up unbelievably loud in his room. He can't hear, and no one in the lobby can hear it either, except Larry, who's going to visit his dad. He's get in there fast enough to turn the TV off for him. But old age. You want to make it to old age, but sadly, when we do, we find our friends are gone, and either way, alternative is no better. Gene Hutmaker, you wrote a book, an anti-Yankee book, and it's kind of with tongue-in-cheek. We've talked about this before. Although you are an anti-Yankee rooter, that gave you the opportunity, as it did all we National League fans in New York who lost Giants and the Mets. We go out to Yankee or Giants and Dodgers. When we were kids, we'd go out to Yankee Stadium, and we could never get behind a team that they'd say it's like rooting for U.S. Steel.
Mm-hmm.
All money. They had a farm team in Kansas City. We loved to root against them. And when stars came in from other teams, we gravitated towards rooting for them just naturally. Harmon Killebrew, what did he mean to you as a Yankee opponent?
Well, he hit 40 homers 8 times, and ironically, his pennant-winning year, he was hurt a lot. He only hit 25 homers.
Yeah.
To take his place, they had Don Mincher, who hit 22. So they still had that 40 homers from that position.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember watching
against Sandy Koufax in the '65 World Series in the 9th inning when they were up 2-0. He did come through with a base hit against the great Koufax, which was kind of like who does that?
He did a little line single to left. I grew up watching on the Yankee station when they go to Minnesota, and there was nothing more beautiful than watching Killebrew launch one into the second deck there. as I recall, his home runs weren't hit that high. Not like Hank Aaron, these long fly balls. He had kind of a sweeping swing, and he would just rocket the ball out there.
Yep, he would. With those arms of his. He was just, because he wasn't
Memories
tall.
of Charmin Harmon. I'm going to throw one in. I co-host a show on the A's, actually it's Oakland Sports, but Nancy Finley, daughter of Carl Finley and niece of Charlie O. Finley, is on the show, and the name Harmon Killebrew came up the other day. He was briefly an Oakland A at the end of his career, and I think it was on the field, but I know for certain after he retired, he did some broadcast work for the A's and some community work and what have you. And with Nancy, it's all family from back then. A lot was said over the years about the Finleys and how they didn't get along with the players and this, that, and the other thing. But the way she reacted when she heard Harmon, she goes, "Oh, Harmon, he's one of ours. He was so sweet." That's exactly. I mean, a lot of people come through a baseball organization, and her memory was not his immense talents, not a. It just he was so sweet.
Yeah.
She said,
cool.
It was really nice, and So, anybody else want to say anything in closing about Harmon? And before we get to the next subject of the day, which is the Hall of Fame ballots just came out, and there's so much to talk about on every different level. I think the ballot is loaded with deserving players, and at the same time, it's loaded with undeserving players for a myriad of reasons. So we'll get to that. Again, anybody didn't get their say about Harmon, I want to include everybody.
Well, just one thing. Did we mention that he was a native Northwesterner, a good Idaho farm boy, I believe, from
Yes, he was.
Payette, Idaho, wasn't it?
Yep, right on the border.
Actually considered the Northwest. I'm just curious. It's real close to it, but is that more the Midwest, or is it just their
Northwest
way of thinking?
Northwest.
That's the Northwest, Ralph.
That's Northwest.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
In fact, I just drove past Payette on my way out here, and Payette is just down the road from Weiser, Idaho, which is where Walter Johnson broke in.
Huh.
Oh my God!
Wow.
Idaho is very good to that franchise, huh?
Yeah.
One thing I can tell you about Harmon, he was quite an outdoorsman. He loved fishing and things like that. And he used to do some shows in Minneapolis, fishing shows after he retired. And he was very much of an outdoorsman, and people just loved him here. It was terrific.
Cool. Go ahead. I was going to say I have a memory of Harmon when I was a kid. We kids growing up in New York would go down to the hotels that the players stayed in. All sports, hockey, basketball, not so much football, but because it was kind of an in and out thing with football teams. But with basketball and hockey and baseball, we go down to the hotels. There's a hotel in New York where the cafeteria is called the Biltmore. It might have been the Roosevelt. They were right next to each other, and teams would stay at both hotels. And they had a basement cafeteria, and we go down and wait for them to come out of the players to come out of the cafeteria, and we'd be all set with color pictures from Sport magazine that we cut out and get players to sign. And I don't remember which one of the twins, when they came in, It was a Rigney-run team, and Rollins and Allen were there, if I'm not mistaken. And my memory of Harmon is of him leaving the cafeteria, walking arm in arm with Bob Allison.
Wow.
They looked like, from behind, it was like Mutt and Jeff. Allison was a big, tall guy. Harmon
Big guy, yeah.
more than 5'9". He was just
wow.
But he was like a box.
He was like a box.
5 by 5.
Right.
Is a compliment for a man, but not so much. A lot of women don't like to be called. I'm just saying. A tip to everybody out there: if you'd like to engage in opposite sex, 5 by 5 doesn't say well. But Harmon and they just walked gingerly out of that cafeteria into a subway exit or entrance in that led directly under the Biltmore or the Roosevelt. So, and they walked to the subway, and they took the subway to the ballpark. It was a different. You wouldn't see
different era.
Subway today, unless it was a national emergency.
Right.
They arrive. They live in gated communities. They arrive in limos and what have you. A lot of times, and it's just there's not the association with the fans as there was in my time.
No.
I miss that.
You're right.
Yeah. So that was Harmon. Let's get to the Hall. Let's get to the ballad. I'm going to start with Gabriel Schechter only because you leaving Cooperstown, where you live a few blocks or a few miles from the museum. Am I correct?
I couldn't afford to live in Cooperstown because I worked at the Hall, but I lived in 3 different communities around there.
Okay. Well put. Because you worked for the Hall, you couldn't afford to live there. That's like the teachers and the firemen can't afford to live in San Francisco. That's the same thing. Why would you want a society where the teachers and the firemen have to live
could live amongst you.
Amongst you. How silly. What a way. It's glad that things are set up where only the rich get to live in the cities and what have you. And they're not paying the teachers and firemen enough to live there. It's a crazy world that we live in.
It is a crazy world.
I lived in Cherry Valley. It's 14 miles from Cooperstown. Cherry Valley has 1 traffic light, no police. I lived there 11 years, never locked the door.
Wow.
Really, I believe it.
So there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Of course, you couldn't get to the door because of all the snow, but still, the door was unlocked.
That's great. That's great. All right. The ballot came out. There's a myriad of guys on it that, like I say, are very deserving. Gabriel, what's your opinion about, I guess, the poster boys for the PEDs, Clemens and Bonds? Because I think they're going to set the tone of...
I don't think they're going to get in this year just because the history of this says that Hoffman and Guerrero are going to get in because they came so close. And there's 2 spots. And I do think Chipper Jones is going to be a first ballot electee. So there's 3. I don't think that leaves room for the others. And this whole Clemens Bond thing, my main feeling is that 50 or 100 years from now, they're all going to be in the Hall of Fame, and nobody's going to care any more than we care why some of the 19th century guys are or are not in. But I can understand why a lot of writers today think, fine, let them be in the Hall of Fame someday. that doesn't mean I have to vote for him. And so there's this historical inevitability that some guys are fighting against. And I think that's it's going to take a little while longer for them to get over that hump.
There was a statement made by Joe Morgan, who sits on the board of directors of the voting. Can you touch on that, Gabriel?
You're breaking up, Ralph.
Oh, there was a statement made by Joe Morgan.
Yes.
On the board of directors with the Hall of Fame. Came out in conjunction with the release of the ballot. Can you touch on that, if you would, Gabriel?
That was strange that it would come out under the Hall of Fame's own website, but it's really what the Hall of Famers have been saying for years. That for this whole time, they've been saying if those guys are in, we're not coming. The irony, of course, is that there are probably 10 to 20 guys already inducted who use steroids.
Right.
But because they were named on a report, they've gotten a pass. But I think we all know that the Hall of Fame isn't pristine anymore. So, I think it was ill-advised for Morgan to do that.
The sportsmanship clause, and I don't think I think there were a number of guys who wouldn't qualify just based on that, if you want to get sticky. But would you? I'm going to throw a name out that I've always been curious. Nolan Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
Did he do steroids?
I don't know. If I had to guess, which I guess you're asking me to do, I would say yes.
Okay. Because I've guessed that for a long time. And one of the reasons I guessed that is that very early after retiring, he tragically had some heart problems, had to go through some problems. And I will just tell you, for having been partnered with a woman who she had to take prednisone for an illness that she had long term. The effects prednisone is a steroidal-based drug, and the side effects of prednisone contributed greatly to the deterioration of her body, and and go on, and names like Lyle Alzado come to mind, and what have you. And I mentioned this on another show. I think the players' union, the unions have a responsibility for the welfare of their members. But all this players' union responsibility is the welfare of their financial well-being. And I think to deliberately tip them off to P-tests, this, that, and the other thing, shows a blatant concern for their concern, blatant disconcernment, or whatever the hell I'm saying, for their well-being, for players' well-being. And that's a societal thing. And, we could talk about did they, who used, who didn't use. It's become pervasive in high schools and in amateur sports that players are juicing up and players that will never reach big leagues.
That was the gist of the Mitchell report. That it wasn't so much a bunch of pros trying to get an edge on each other as the example they're setting for people who shouldn't even be thinking about this stuff.
All right.
All right, before you guys chip in, this will be my last question of Gabriel. He was never mentioned in any article that I've ever read. I really just have a feeling about it Did Chipper Jones help himself?
Oh, my goodness.
Along those lines? Or am I just...
I don't know. As a Mets fan, I watched him tear up the Mets. It didn't look like he needed any help to do that.
Okay. Well, as a Mets fan, most players don't need much help in tearing up. It comes in all different varieties. You don't have greenies, tear up the Mets.
Yeah.
A little Coke, Pirates, tear up the Mets. Everything will be fine.
Excuse me, Ralph. I'm going to have to go, okay?
Ronnie, continue to recuperate. We love you.
Thank you. Love you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye, Ron.
Some of the other candidates. Let's go to Gene. Anybody out there on the ballot that you really want to see elected? You personally.
Well, naturally, being the Yankee hater, I do love the bloody sock, despite his rhetoric and other.
Yeah, I wonder if writers can pull the lever on someone with Schilling's mindset about life. I mean, you'd almost want to keep him out just because you wouldn't want to be around him on induction day. You wouldn't want it. But that notwithstanding, you think he's deserving, Schilling?
He won the year Randy Johnson won the Cy Young. Schilling won the Sporting News Pitcher of the Year, and basically he had like really good years, and he was just a little above average than some of the others. But he did have some really great years, and I think it was 3 years runner-up Cy Young. And then he has that postseason that is outstanding. A lot of people say don't consider it a postseason, but that's part of baseball too. And it shouldn't keep you from getting in like Ernie Banks, but it should be the cherry on a sundae for your career if you were exceptional in it, like John Smoltz was.
Yes. When you think of Schilling, Jack Morris comes to mind. Speaking of guys who came up in the postseason, should Morris be in, gentlemen?
Yes, he should be in, and he's on the ballot this year for the Veterans Committee, and because this year they do one of their 4 eras, modern era, and to just tell you how prolific Morris was. Morris, he fell off the rung after 15 years. But what I'd like to say was collusion amongst the owners during the 80s hurt him because they were not hiring free agents. The problem with Morris was he wasn't well liked, especially after the 91 World Series where he jumped ship to Toronto 28 days won the World Series. Well, you can't deny a guy who has 254 wins, 186 losses in his career with 2,478 strikes, 3,824. He has 3 World Series rings, and he has an overall 7.4 win-loss with a 3.80 postseason ERA. He was a pitcher's pitcher in an era where you didn't have pitch counts. He was an old-time pitcher. He went 10 innings in the World Series. He was the most sought-after free agent in the mid-'80s. George Steinbrenner was going to give him a contract. All of a sudden, he pulled it back, and he had to go with his tail back to Detroit. I think collusion hurt him. I think I'd like to see Morris get in. Anyone on that?
I would put Morris in ahead of Schilling. Schilling's career record very similar to Oral Hershiser. 1-loss record, ERA, and Hershiser's Hall of Fame case has disappeared long ago. What sets Schilling apart from him is the postseason, and that's where Jack Morris stood out as well. But Morris has better career stats than Schilling, so I'd put him in ahead of Schilling.
Well, in the past, those two guys not winning 300 games, it kind of worked against them. But at this point, I don't think there'll be another 300-game winner in Major League Baseball ever again.
Didn't work against Pedro Martinez.
That's true. That's true.
And a lot of others.
Okay, I want to talk about the man who is most unjustly over the years been refused admittance to the Hall of Fame, and no better man to talk to about that. And I want to talk about Gil Hodges with Bill.
My favorite subject. Where do we
favorite
start?
Subject in the whole world.
I think so. Yeah, talk about a guy, well, if you combine the baseball writers' vote and the various Veterans Committee votes, he has more Hall of Fame votes than anybody who has not made it. You know, another thing, I know when they established the Hall to try and make it ultra-exclusive, they set that magic 75% target. If you didn't get 75% of the votes, you wouldn't be elected. Well, you know, some guys were later elected by the Veterans Committee, but if they had simply set that bar at 60%, you know, the Hall would not be overrun all of a sudden. The only guys who would be there who are not there right now are Jack Morris and Gil Hodges. Facebook, you get into all these youngsters who say, oh, he doesn't have the stats. He doesn't have the stats. Well, you know, to me, one thing that I think chronically gets overlooked is looking at the numbers in context. And again, end of his last season, and probably most, if not all of you guys know this, 10th on the all-time career home run list, and more home runs than any right-hander in the history of the National League. I mean, if that's not a Hall of Fame credentials, plus his sterling fielding, his 7 pennant winners and 2 world championships as a player, plus managing the Miracle Mets, I mean, I don't know what more a guy has to do.
Yeah.
I want to point...
Well said. Ian, it was well said about Jack Morris. I wanted to tell you that. And Bill, it was very well said about Gil Hodges.
Can I point out one thing, Ralph?
Please.
Can I point out one thing? Gil Hodges, Duke Snider, and Pee Wee Reese were all on the Writers Association ballot together 9 years. I think Hodges had the most votes 7 of the 9 years.
Yeah, I believe that's correct. And I hate to say it, just like Schilling being a difficult personality shouldn't count against him, but it does. I think the fact that Gil died young and they say out of sight, out of mind, I think that hurt him.
Yeah. I mean, Duke Snider wasn't a popular guy, and Snider didn't make it until Willie Mickey and the Duke came out and got attention back on him.
Yep.
Right.
Well,
by the way, Snider hit more home runs than anybody in the 50s, anybody in the National League.
And you know who was number 2 in the 50s? Our man Gil.
Right.
Yep.
Well, you know, I never said this to you, Bill, but it was a little bit of a small ballpark.
Yeah. Well, that's probably part of why Larry Walker is being kept out today, and I don't know how the rest of you guys feel, but with the kind of production that Larry Walker put up, I think he ought to be there, and maybe that's why it took Chuck Klein so long to be elected, because he was playing that ridiculous bandbox called Baker Bowl, but,
Can you guys speak to the election process that when Gil was eligible last time, I think, Bill, you were one of those who helped put together a litany of information about Gil's career that was printed up and intended for the voters to see, the old-timers committee to see, and that information was withheld from them, and they never did. They made their decision without seeing.
Do you know that for a fact, Ralph? Is that publicized?
Yes. I can elaborate on this if you like, guys.
Please.
That, before we started the campaign, and we had, a comprehensive book put together by one of our members, plus a petition that had over 3,000 signatures. First, we contacted the Hall of Fame to make sure that something like that would even be welcomed, or if it would be treated as the equivalent of jury tampering. And they said, oh, no. We encourage fan-submitted materials, and they will be made available to the committee. Well, there were the very careful words. I found out from Mark Cafargo, who led the Dick Allen effort, and they also put together a lot of material, that, in fact, the materials, none of the fan materials were presented to the committee. And so one of our other members contacted the person that he had spoken to in the first place and said, well, what happened here? And he said, well, when the committee met, they were told that in addition to being given the statistical and biographical report that the Hall produced, that there were these fan-submitted materials available, and did they want to see them? And since the committee did not express any interest in that, they never saw them.
That's interesting, because when I worked there, our instructions were to tell people who wanted to send material to send them to the vice president, PR, and copies to send a copy for each Veterans Committee member, and they would be forwarded.
We did. Yeah, and that's the story we got. Although we were told that our material, along with the other materials, would be placed in the Giamatti Library permanently. So,
well, that's probably true.
Yeah, the Dick Allen group did, and so we're thinking about for next time. There's only that brief window between when the ballot is announced and when the vote takes place. It's I think about 5 weeks. They got a hold of either work or residential addresses for several of the voters, and sent the materials directly that way. So That's what our plan is for next time. We have that opportunity.
Can I throw out a name that I'd like to see in addition to Dick Allen and Gil Hodges and Morris, and I'd like to see Vinny Minoso in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, God, yes. I'm not that big always on the news stats, but, third highest WAR in the 1950s, I believe, in the American League. The late start because of being a Negro leaguer, the first black Latin in the majors, lifetime coach, and just wonderful ambassador for the game.
Yeah.
I know that's not part of the criteria, but dang, I think he, and I really felt like when he passed away after he got passed over last time, the last interview he gave, it almost felt like he died from a broken heart.
His batting average is the same as Mickey Mantle's and Al Kalines.
Yeah.
I agree. He should be in.
Oh, definitely. He should. Hey, Ralph.
Pardon me?
Ralph, one thing. The most glaring person who should be in the Hall of Fame was on the Veterans Committee this year. And I always have a show on him, and we know with the Players Union, not the same union it was, is Marvin Miller. And
oh, God, yes.
Marvin Miller. He grew up in Flatbush area near where I grew up. I grew up in Sid Bay. Nice. Then he went on to become the chief economist for the United Steelworkers Union. And what he did for baseball and what he, had to go through to lose the Supreme Court case, for which he knew he was going to do. But to give arbitration, to get the owners to get arbitration in 68, it would be the Seitz decision in 75 through arbitration, although the owners tried to go through court. That would give free agency their mouth.
Yeah. Small. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Executive vote for him? Don't they have 4 executives on the Veterans Committee? I don't know if any of them would vote for him.
Well, that's possible too, because they're bitter that it came after.
They've always stacked the deck against him being elected.
Yeah.
But it is the biggest travesty that Miller is not a Hall of Famer and that Bowie Kuhn got elected, getting credit for all the things that he fought to prevent Marvin Miller from doing.
Bud
Selig gets elected, and Walter O'Malley gets elected, and sitting outside of the Hall of Fame is a statue. It's not on the inside, but it's on the outside of Buck O'Neill.
Yeah.
It's inside. It's inside the museum.
Oh, okay. I thought that was that. I thought it was outside. Buck O'Neill.
No, they've got a Satchel Paige statue out on the courtyard, along with a couple of others.
Okay. But I thought that was a travesty, and Bill.
Oh yeah.
Personally, I don't think
Minoso dying of
have
a
their own
broken
wing.
heart, and I think Buck O'Neill might have the same way. Shortly after the final time when he wasn't elected, he died shortly after that. So.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Hey, can I throw something out about Buck O'Neill that also gets back to our discussion of pet use?
Sure.
A quote that I came across from him in an interview that I just found fascinating. Now, I am, first off, I'm no fan of steroids at all. I think they were a blight on the game. I think they skewed stats. But, would you guys all agree that probably Buck O'Neill is as close as we've had in modern day baseball to something like, I guess, the equivalent of a baseball saint? Just a reputation as a guy who gave his life to the game and the first black coach, absolutely, even though he might have been privately deeply hurt by not being elected, publicly he was always nothing but positive. So an interviewer asked him, gee, if steroids had been around in your days, Buck, do you think you and the other Negro leaguers would have used them? And his answer was, yes.
Yeah. In a sense, you really can't. You have to blame the system, and you really can't blame the individual player. To close this about the Hall, let me ask you, Gabriel Schechter.
Okay.
Mention the Mitchell report. How accurate was it? Was it 100% accurate in terms of the players that they mentioned, or were there some that?
I don't see how it could have been 100% accurate. I mean, some people talked and a lot of people didn't, and there was always kind of an underlying truth that everybody knew. I think there are a lot of things that are fishy about the Mitchell report, but I think in the big picture there was more going on than we'll ever know about.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay, gentlemen, what a great show.
This was fun.
And I don't want to leave anybody shortchanged. Is there anybody that wants? Oh, I want to get you in here. Vic Raschi was one of the players that was traded to your team, Gene Hutmaker, the Cardinals. And I did an interview years ago in 1995 with Charlie Silvera, who was the backup catcher to Yogi Berra all those years and had all those rings and only got one World Series at bat, but lived quite a good life on World Series money. And he said, half jokingly, half serious, that Allie Reynolds, Vic Raschi, and Eddie Lopat should go into the Hall of Fame as a trifecta.
Sort of like Tinker, Evers, and Chance?
Right, exactly.
There you go.
just wanted to mention that a lot of players are really on that bubble over the years, and what gets me is that it's all so subjective. The different voting methods over the years, the players that get screwed, the ones that personality comes into play. But yet the Hall of Fame. The ballot came out. I saw a little blurb on one of the sites. I instantly went to it, even though, you say, well, is it this? Is it that? Does it really mean as much? It holds our interests as fans like almost nothing else. And,
that's true.
Yeah, you were so lucky, Gabriel Schechter, to have worked in that environment for all those years. Wow.
Yeah, I was lucky.
Yeah, because every now and then you hear sports fans talk about the football, basketball, or hockey halls, but at least to me it seems like, the Baseball Hall of Fame and the balloting gets far, far more discussion than all the rest of them put together.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
And the Basketball Hall of Fame, for instance, is just a mishmash of college and pro and absolutely. If you think it's Bush the way baseball makes their decisions, wow, basketball is even worse. So we're grateful. Thank you, gentlemen. It's been very, very cool. Ian Kahanowitz, Gabriel Schechter, Bill Hall, and Gene Hutmaker. Got you all. Ronnie Rabinovitz had to leave us early. Ronnie's had some serious health problems lately and is recovering, and we're delighted that he is. And keep doing it, Ronnie. That's you got to all meet when we're 90. That's the whole idea of this. We've all made a pledge. So, Gabriel, welcome aboard to the network.
Okay. Count me in.
I hope you do this. And, again, we have a bunch of folks. If a Sunday you can't make it, David Hubler couldn't make it. We get by, and next week we rotate, and it'll be fun. I'm enjoying this. George Case, come back soon. And everybody out there listening, just keep on keeping on. I'm Ralph Tycho. It's the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. And I'm enjoying this. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ralph.
Bye. Enjoy the rest of the day.